This is one of those difficult passages. And the Bible's filled with difficult passages, and this is one that is maybe uniquely problematic. And it stretches our view of Jesus a little bit. And I have to admit, it's an uncomfortable story. But it's one that I think it's worth at least exploring a little bit as we go through the Gospel of Mark. Starting with chapter 7, verses 24 to 30. Jesus left that place and went to the vicinity of Tyre, and he entered a house and did not want anyone to know it. Yet he could not keep his presence secret. In fact, as soon as she heard about him, a woman whose little daughter was possessed by an impure spirit came and fell at his feet. The woman was a Greek born in Syrian Phoenicia, and she begged Jesus to drive the demon out of her daughter. First, let the children eat all they want, he told her, for it is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs. Lord, she replied, even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs. Then he told her, for such a reply you may go. The demon has left your daughter. She went home and found her child lying on the bed, and the demon gone. Now, there's a few things we have to work through this morning, and we'll work through them as we go through the sermon. The first thing I would like to say about this woman is she had a problem. She had a daughter that had a serious issue. Mark says she had, depending on your version, an unclean spirit, an impure spirit, and it left her in a bad situation. Later on in that passage, it talks about a demon. Now let me just stop just for a second. There's some important questions here, and because we have a wide variety of people here, let me at least do a little walking through a minefield, because I think it needs to happen. When we come to a verse like this, half the people in the room think, well, that's a weird construct. Why would it talk in those terms? And other people who just came from watching the 30-year anniversary of The Exorcist know exactly what this text means, or so they think. So let me give you a wide range of things. It could mean something like we think about with devils and angels and demons and good spirits and all this kind of thing. That is certainly a very real possibility. Let me also say one other thing. If you've been alive in the first century, and you'd have been alive and you'd have been in Syrian Phoenicia or Tyre, where Jesus was, and you were sick, and sneezing and the flu and a fever and a whole host of other things, and I went up to you and I said, in the first century, oh, I know what's wrong with you. You have the flu. You have this little animal that has gotten into your body and it's multiplied into millions. And what you got to do is, if you take this pill here, swallow this for 3 days, and by the way, tell the rest of your family, here's a big jar of what we call Purell. Just wash your hands with it every day, and it'll kill all these little animals before they get in you, and you'll feel better. They'd have nodded their head, and they would have burned me at the stake. I'd have been using language unfamiliar to them. If you'd have asked someone, why am I healthy? Why am I rich? Why is everything going good? They'll go, oh, you have been uniquely blessed by God's Spirit. If they were sick, they'd say, why am I sick? Oh, you're tormented with an impure spirit. I just gave you a range of things there. I'm just throwing that out there and letting you think through those things. So when we get to something like this, all those things are on the table. I am not going to wade my way through this minefield and tell you which one it is and isn't. I don't know. Other than to tell you, either way, this woman's girl was suffering in a very real manner. And she heard about this Jesus was in town. Maybe I'll go find him. Now, the one part of the story that we gloss over too quickly was this early part of the story where it says Jesus entered a house and wanted it to remain a secret. You ever had one of those days where you just wanted to just go in your space, find your recliner, get in your blanket, and have no one bother you? Jump on your bike, go ride, and have no one even approach you. I think we all have those kind of days. I'm sure Jesus had those kind of days. So this woman heard people talking about this Jesus, and she went looking to find him. I don't know if she was lucky, or I don't know if she was extraordinarily well connected, or she had a lot of people that she could kind of talk to that kept track of what was going on in the town, but she found out where Jesus was. And Jesus did not want to be found, and she found him anyway. Here's the second part. Jesus was a Jew. She was a Gentile. There's a divide there. Most Gentiles weren't so fond of Jews. And Jews were not fond at all of most Gentiles. So there was a divide. We think that maybe the Gentile in the story looked down on a Jew, which might have been the case. So for her to seek out Jesus, that was really maybe a step down in her world. And we know that Jesus' fellow Jews, if he's going to go talk to a Gentile woman, that would be a step down for him. So we have a problem at a lot of different levels. We have a problem to get over if we're going to talk to each other. There's a problem with this woman with her daughter, and she wants her daughter to feel better again. I've heard it said, and I think there's a lot of truth here, any average parent is only as happy as their unhappiest child. And there's a lot of truth in that. We suffer when they suffer. We feel nervous when they feel nervous. It's multiplied. This woman was struggling with her own daughter's ailment. I think back at the times in my children's life. Our daughter had her appendix out once. She had vocal cord surgery once, where she couldn't talk for 2 weeks, right? Something like that. She had to write everything for 2 weeks. I think back the time our son had to have wrist surgery. And all they did was, they had to go in and literally saw about 1/8 of an inch to make his arm smaller. I don't know if it was whatever happened, and he had to have a cast. You feel it. You feel when your children go through stuff. A lot. And so this woman gets to Jesus, and so we want to say, she's there. Everything will be all right now. But here's the part of the passage that troubles us. In fact, she comes and she says about her daughter, and here's Jesus' response. He says, "Let the children eat all they want, for it's not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs." Let me translate for you. The woman was the dog. Did you get that connection? See, we want Jesus to respond in a certain way. We want him to rush to this woman and pick her up and say everything's going to be all right. But he just looked at her and said, let the children get what they want first. It's not right to give what's supposed to go to them and give it to the dogs. Boy, that sounds awfully harsh. We want Jesus to step in and say, I'm for all people. But Jesus said, I've come to seek and to save the lost house of Israel. Jesus is focused upon his people. There's reason for that. We'd have to get in Paul and talk about that for a long period of time. But this is not what Jesus does. Why would Jesus look at this woman in need and say, why would I take what's supposed to go to the children and throw it to the dogs? That would seem exceptionally cruel. Perhaps he just wanted to make a public statement that he really is about what's going on with the Jewish people, and there's reason for that. The Jews were representative of all humanity. God had made a relationship with Abraham and said, through you I will bless all people. It is through your representation, your family, that I'm going to come. And when the Jews failed, that failure was all of humanity's. So Jesus, as representative, as Messiah of the Jewish people, is going through this story that will later be taken to the Gentiles. But here it's very much this Jesus is King of the Jews, and he's coming in this Jewish setting. Or perhaps he was just perhaps this was some sort of test, is not the right word, but just to see the reaction. So some of you parents out there, some of you have had your children come to you very upset, very indignant, very angry, and said, here's what you need to do. You need to do this because my sister, she grabbed this and it's my thing and you need to tell her stop. And then you look at them and say, I think the issue here is you're very selfish. Let's talk about your selfishness. No, that's not what I want. This woman says, I have an issue. My daughter is sick. And Jesus goes, yeah, but you're a Gentile. That's even worse. Now, transport this to our day today and imagine the response. And so I threw it on the New York Times behind me. Christ insults Canaanite. We now have a rights issue. Someone's rights have been violated. She stated her problem was X, and Jesus says, yeah, but there's also this. Today, if you did that, people would storm out. They'd call a press conference. We'd have an issue on our hands. But that's not what she said. She basically said, well, that might be true, but even dogs get scraps. And right now, I'm at the point of my life, I yearn for a scrap of something that's good, something that's real, something that's helpful. In short, she's humble. She is willing. She submits to the Father. Think about what our life would be if we reacted a little more like she did. Sometimes when we're face to face with an issue that we have, we respond like we expect her to respond. Who are you to tell me that I should do this? Don't tell me that's not my problem. This is my problem. I know when I'll be ready for something. I'll come to you and let you know when I'm ready for it. Jesus stopped and said, well, I know you think that you want me to help with this person at work, but really the problem is you're not forgiving. Really the problem is you're still too selfish. Really your problem is you're not humble. Really your problem is, and we don't like to hear sometimes the words that Jesus says to us. Imagine later, and I'm just using Paul as an example. In Philippians chapter 3, Paul said very clearly that of all the rules of the law, he said, I kept them perfectly. Every one of them. And then he said, but what I once thought was to my profit, I now consider loss for the sake of Jesus Christ. Just because he kept everything perfectly didn't mean that his heart was not dead. Jesus is really, we talk a lot about a childlike faith, so this morning I'm talking about Fido's faith, a dog-like faith. Now, if you're like me, I can't prove this biblically, but I'm going to do a lot of work on this. I'm convinced that dogs will be in heaven. And we won't find a single cat anywhere close. I've said this before. If your dog was 10 feet tall and weighed 800 pounds, when you came home from work and got out of your car, your dog would still run over and lick you in the face and wag its tail because he's genuinely glad to see you. Let's talk about cats just for a second. If your cat was 10 feet tall and weighed 850 pounds, when you got home from work, you wouldn't make your second step toward the house before your cat would have eaten you. Your dog doesn't eat you because it genuinely likes you. Your cat hasn't eaten you because it's done the math. and knows it can't. We talk about a childlike faith, but this woman exerts what I'm calling a dog-like faith. She was willing to listen. She was willing to hear very, very unpleasant words. And when Jesus said, here's what I want, she was willing to heal or to be obedient. She accepted tough words. Scraps? Who are you calling a... That's not what she did. She said, you know what? Your scraps are better than my meal right now. What you have for me is better than what I have for myself. There's something here, and she was commended for it. Perhaps this was just a simple test, but it's one that others have gone through. Mentioned Paul before. He said, I'm going to be obedient, and I'm going to become a leader of the Jews. Jesus said, I want you to be obedient, but you will lose your place, and you will be opposed. You'll be imprisoned, and you'll suffer for me. And Paul said, all right. I don't think we think about that. Paul was young. He said he'd advanced beyond all his peers. He was perhaps as high as the Jewish ruling council. He was trusted to do the difficult jobs for the Jews who were in charge. He might have been amongst the top ones. He was on his way to Damascus to do something similar. And he had that encounter with Jesus Christ, and for the next 13 years, he was in silence. He was in isolation. He was not a leader of anybody, any place, at any time. That had to have been difficult. Let's think about Moses. Moses was a prince in Egypt until God said, I have a task. But your whole country is going to turn their backs on you. All of them. I just want you to be faithful. The call is always the same. I just want you to be faithful. Elijah goes off. He's waiting to hear from the Lord. He's yearning. He's waiting to hear it. He's not in the whirlwind. He's not in the earthquake. And then after all this is done, there's a still small voice. And Elijah was obedient to that voice. God interrupted Jonah and said, Jonah, I really got a task for you. And Jonah said, no, you don't. I'm not going to go that way. I'm going to go this way. And God said, all right, we'll see about that. And then Jonah was faithful and wasn't happy about it. And by the way, if you think the story of Jonah is he went, he rebelled, he got eaten by a fish, got spit up, end of Jonah. No, that's the end of chapter 1. You got a few chapters left. Jonah did what God said. And Nineveh, the enemies of Israel, surprised them. And they repented. And God said, whoa, I'm not going to do what I threatened now. And Jonah got mad and went sat under a tree and pouted. Because God let his enemies live. And then God had to have another encounter with Jonah underneath the shady leaves that he was sitting under. A lot of you have dogs. A dog's life is exceedingly simple. Sleep. Go outside to do your business. Chase squirrels. Sleep again. Wait for the humans to come home and serve me. Lay next to human, plop on my back, see if they'll rub my belly. Eat some more, go outside to do my business, and sleep. That's pretty simple. And often, when we sit to eat, a dog will circle the table, just waiting for something to hit the floor. Now, in my hometown, for years and years and years, there was a big plant, Quaker Oats plant, and that plant made dog food. That's what big dog food plant. I'm not exactly sure what goes into dog food, but I'm quite sure that I don't want to eat it. And I'm sure there's a part of a dog that eats it because that's what's served. But the dog is waiting. Oh, this is a good night. They're having a T-bone. Someone's going to cut it and something's going to fly off the plate. I'm going to be there for it. You know what we have might be a little better than what they do. I have a lot of things, a lot of plans that I want to see happen in life. I spend a lot of time doing, and I bet that I think they're all right, but in response to or in comparison to what God has for me, they're probably scraps. God has something better. A few weeks ago, my wife and I were coming back from Mackinac Island, and we're driving down a different route in Michigan. And we were driving it because we weren't coming home. We're coming home by way of Lansing because the day before, Sarah had just given birth, and we were going to stop by the hospital and see the new baby. But we found out halfway there, we were going to get there right at 1 o'clock. And then Sarah called and said, we didn't know this. By the way, 1 to 3 is quiet time. No visitors allowed on the floor. You can't be here till 3. So we had to kill about 2 hours. And so on the way down, there's this little town in Michigan called Alma, A-L-M-A. I know Alma, Michigan, because for a while there in high school, when I was still deciding, there was a time in my life I was between the Air Force Academy and pre-law. And if I was going to go pre-law, I was either going to go to Alma College, there's a college in Alma, or Ohio Northern in a little town called Ada. I must like little towns with 3 or 4 letters begin and end with A. And so we pulled off in this town, and we stopped, and we walked around the downtown a little bit and just looked. I went to the campus just to look around. And my wife goes, why do you want to see the campus? And I told her the story. I said, because for a while there, this was on my radar screen. And I was thinking about, this was one of the places I was thinking about going to college. And then the Lord intervened and stepped in and changed plans and all those kind of things. And I have no idea what that life would have looked like. No idea. I'm so far down this one, I have no idea. But I'm quite certain that if God asked me to go this way, that the other way would have been lesser. There is a simplicity to life when you simply accept what the Lord is giving you. Part of simplifying is accepting the Lord's provision. We stress sometimes because we fight. We stress because we want different. We stress because we want more. We stress because we know better. A simplified life is a life that simply trusts in the Lord. A simplified life seeks to bloom where they're planted instead of trying to get to that garden on the other side of the fence. A simplified life looks for what the Lord is giving. That's where a lot of us struggle all the time. There's something about this moment. There's something about the people that are around us now. There's something about the blessings in my life now. And I will bet that probably a lot of us miss the real blessings in our life right now because we can't get our mind off the other blessing that we would like to see happen, and so we don't live in the moment of this one. I hope that made sense. Because I'm one who struggles. Something good is happening now, my mind's already off to the next thing. I've probably wasted enough moments in life thinking about what's coming and not living in this one enough. Fido, your average dog, does not have that problem. They always live in the middle of this moment and are quite thrilled with what's happening right now. There was once, and this was a long time ago, I think Adam was a teen. He was probably 14 or 15. It was still in the age before the iPod, where people had CDs. Okay, if you're under the age of 15, a CD, you probably know what a CD is. But they had personal CD players, and there was some thing going on. There might have been a district event to something, and he was going to go, and I told him, you're not allowed to take your CD player. And he goes, why? And I said, because I have an assignment for you. Instead of putting those dumb things on, I want you to stop and I want you to talk to the person that's sitting next to you. And I want you to just get to know him. And I want you to just find out about him. Because I think that's far more valuable. I think we live now where we purposely avoid moments because we're so much caught in our cocoon of things. So this woman had something else in mind. Now, here's the good part of the story. After all this, Jesus stepped in, healed her daughter, because her response impressed him so much. In fact, he even commended it. Her great faith. So when God asked you or points out something else, are you willing to accept what seems like not exactly what you want, but what the Lord is asking you to do? I'd like Libby to come up. I want to end by taking communion today.